The movie opens with a scene where the two ritual morticians, Daigo and Ikui, are on their way to a client's house to conduct a final ceremony for a young woman named Tomio. Daigo reminisces about his decision to relocate from Tokyo, where he was part of an orchestra that got dissolved. Daigo got himself an expensive cello as it was his dream to become a talented cello player. As the orchestra gig didn't work out for him, he started to question his talent for playing cello. The sudden unemployment left him in debt as the cello was very expensive. Daigo explains his situation to his wife Mika and tells Mika about his decision to quit cello and move back to his hometown Yamagata. Mika is a very kind woman, so she supports his decision and tells him they could live in his mother's house freely without worrying about money. To forget his burden and start a new life, he decides to sell his cello and move to Yamagata. Mika and Daigo begin their new life in the house he inherited from his mother after her death. His mother opened a small bar in the place and raised him alone after his father abandoned both of them. Daigo decides to find a new job as he is unemployed and finds an ad in the newspaper about a job dealing with departures. He thinks it is a travel agency looking for a tour guide and decides to apply for the job. The next day Daigo visits the agency, unknown about the life experiences ahead of him. He enters the agency with a determined mind to get the job. Daigo greets a woman working in the NK agency and asks what kind of work they are hiring for as he is oblivious about what he will do in this job. The woman smirks at him as the head of NK enters the room. She introduces Daigo to the head and tells him that he's here for the job interview. Daigo greets him as they sit down to discuss the job. The boss asks him if he will work hard for the position, to which Daigo obviously agrees. Daigo is surprised when the head tells him he's hired and will pay him around 500,000 yen. The huge pay confuses him as he asks for more details about the job and learns that he has to assist the head in his work. Ikui, the head boss, tells him that his career is casketing, putting dead bodies in a casket and getting them ready for the final rituals. Daigo is shocked and informs Ikui that the ad in the newspaper says departures, and learns that it's a misprint. The ad was supposed to be about the departed, not departures. Ikui tells him that fate has brought him here, but he can quit working if he doesn't like the job. Daigo comes home with a surprise for Miko and tells her he got the job. When Miko asks him if it is a tour guide job, Daigo is uncomfortable mentioning dead bodies to her and tells her that it has something to do with ceremonies. The next day Daigo goes to work and tries to get acquainted with the job and his surroundings. As he inspects the office caskets, the boss calls him for a job. Unknown to the experience he's going to have, Daigo embraces himself and visits the location. As he reaches the place, he's welcomed by crew members that work for the boss. Ikui tells him that he has to act for a training video. The crew members start filming the video as Daigo lays down, acting as a dead body, while Ikui performs the mortician rituals on him. As Ikui demonstrates how to shave a dead body, Daigo suddenly moves and gets a small cut on his cheek. When Daigo returns home, he has to lie again when Mika asks about his face. The next day Ikui takes Daigo on a real casketing job that involves a real dead body. Daigo is nervous about his first gig, but Ikui assures him that he has to watch for now, even though he knows his first job will be hard. As both of them reach the house, Daigo is disgusted by the smell coming from the home. But Ikui remains calm and composed because of his experience. The undertaker informs them that the old lady died 2 weeks back and the body is in a bad state. Ikui asks him to assist as this is a hard job to do alone. Daigo is revolted by the rotting smell and starts vomiting mid-work, but he manages to complete it somehow. Ikui excuses him as it was a challenging task for him on his first mortician job, so he should take the day off. While Daigo returns home on a bus, he notices that some schoolgirls are revolted by the smell coming from his body. He immediately runs to a local sauna and meets an old man who asks him to leave the money on the counter. Daigo starts to clean himself vigorously to get rid of the foul smell and later relaxes in hot water to find some peace. While on his way out, he meets an old friend and his mother, who owns the sauna. The old lady tells her granddaughter how Daigo is a great cello player in the big city, but Daigo is embarrassed to tell her the truth. She greets Daigo goodbye and asks him to visit again with Mika. After reaching home, Daigo is depressed about his job and starts to feel nauseated again when he looks at the raw chicken on the table that Mika prepared for dinner. The dead chicken jogs his memory of the dead body, and he feels like vomiting. He embraces Mika to forget about his new job, but he's still disturbed about what he saw early that day. Daigo starts to think he's being punished for not being present at his mother's last rites. He starts to question his decisions in life, which make him want to play cello. With a troubled mind, Daigo starts to play to find some peace and in hopes of turning back time to live his past memories again, with the tunes of the cello. The tunes bring back his memories of when he started playing the cello as a kid. He relives the memories of his father and mother visiting a lake at night, where he exchanged stones with his father. Daigo's father gives him a rough stone, but Daigo gives him a smooth one. As he plays his cello sadly but gracefully, Mika wakes up from sleep in the other room admiring Daigo's rekindled interest in playing the cello. Daigo stands over a bridge, looking at the rivers while contemplating his life. He looks at a dead fish flowing back when he meets the old man from the sauna on the bridge who spots 3 other salmon trying to get up the stream. Daigo asks him why these salmon try to get up the stream even though they know they will end up dead. Why are they making this futile attempt at life? The old man tells him that the fishes are just trying to return home to where they were born. This strikes Daigo deeply as he learns a new lesson about life and starts to contemplate life yet again. He later meets Mr. Ikue on the bridge, who asks him to come along with him to assist with another client. Daigo is frustrated at his job, but Mr. Ikue ensures that it's his fate to do this work, and both of them set off to do another casketing job. As they reach their client's house, he nags them for being late for the ceremony. The client tells them they earned through the dead, so they should respect their job and be on time. Daigo observes Ikue as he cleans the dead body while performing one final makeup, which makes the body bearable for the family to watch. He realizes one has to be gentle while taking care of the dead body and respecting the family members' presence, how the final rites are supposed to be done in an attractive manner, so the family members feel some form of peace at the loss of a loved one. Daigo develops some respect for his work with this experience. After completing their task, when both of them are about to leave, they are greeted by the man who nagged them earlier. He's the husband of the deceased. The man asks them to forgive his rude behavior earlier and thanks them for making his wife look beautiful one last time. He gives them some delicious food as a parting present for their service. Daigo and Ikue eat it with joy after a hard day of work. Daigo and Mika visit the old lady's sauna who invited him the other day. The old lady tells Mika to take good care of Daigo because of his rough childhood. She tells him how after Daigo's father abandoned them, he used to come to the sauna to cry as he couldn't do it in front of his mother. Mika assures her that she will take great care of him. After leaving the sauna, they both decide to have drinks and listen to old music from his mother's collection. Miko reminds him that the clean records signify that his mother must have loved his dad even after he abandoned them. As the music sets in, Daigo starts to feel nostalgic about his childhood. He tells Mika how he doesn't remember his dad's face anymore. Later that night, Daigo gets a call from Mrs. Uemura, the lady from the office, for another job. She asks him to drop by the office to do another emergency casketing job for a client. Daigo agrees and sneaks late at night for his work without informing Mika, but she wakes up from sleep while Diego tries to leave for work. She gets doubtful of her husband's job. The next day Daigo goes to work while he bids Mika goodbye, and as he reaches the office, Mrs. Uemura praised him for his hard work last night. She offers him some hot tea as it is freezing outside and asks him if he slept well. Daigo denies it and asks her how she got into this business. Mrs. Uemura starts to explain to him how she got her job. She tells him about how she worked for the NK agency after her previous employer died, and she met Mr. Ikue, who came to casket his body. She tells him that her wish to be casketed properly after her death made her interested in this line of work. Daigo is surprised by how fate works. On his way home, Daigo again meets the old friend from the sauna. The old friend is with his family, and as Daigo tries to greet them, he sends them off and asks them to wait for him while he talks to Daigo about something important. Daigo's friend informs him that the townspeople are talking about his new job as a mortician. He disrespectfully asks him to find a better job and leaves without a proper goodbye. As Daigo reaches home, he finds Mika waiting for him in front of the television. She plays the training video made by Mr. Ikue. Daigo asks her why she snooped around his desk, but Mika tells him not to change the subject. Mika is embarrassed about her husband's job and asks him if he wants to make a career doing this job permanently. Daigo is in big trouble this time as Mika is serious about not letting him work there anymore. She asks him to quit the job and find a regular profession to make a promising career. As they argue, she tells him she has supported all of his decisions until now, but if he doesn't listen to her this time, she'll go back home. Daigo tries to calm her while explaining that it's not a bad job as he's just tending to the dead people's needs. He tells her that everyone dies someday and somebody has to look after them after they die, but Mika calls him filthy for doing this job. Mika decides to return home the next day and tells him to see her when he quits the job. Daigo decides to quit his casketing job and meets Mr. Ikui in his private room. They both dine together as Mr. Ikui starts to talk about his past. He tells Daigo about how he started the business 9 years ago after his wife died. He explains the cycle of life and talks about how death is natural. Ikui tells him how humans eat the meat of dead animals to survive as it is only natural to do so. He feels no shame in his work, but he mentions that he hates himself. Daigo and Mr. Ikui enjoy the food while Daigo decides to keep working for Mr. Ikui. He learns yet another important lesson from his encounter with Mr. Ikui. These newfound life lessons have made Daigo proud of what he does. Even though he's troubled about his life and the decisions he makes, he's pleased that he now has a newfound passion. Daigo tries to work diligently in his job as a ritual mortician. Both head out to tend to a new client a few days later. It has been 2 months since Daigo relocated from Tokyo. They tend to the client's needs and put the deceased named Tomio in a casket. While leaving, Tomio's dad thanks them for taking care of her. 3 of them, including Mrs. Uemura, dine at a restaurant while discussing Diego's cello skills. Mrs. Uemura asks him to play some cello for them, and he plays it delightfully, mesmerizing both of them. As days go by, Daigo starts to embrace his job. Instead of being ashamed of it, he channels his sadness and grief into his talent in cello and improves on his skills. He plays the cello with charisma like a professional with years of hard work and experience. One day, when he returns home, he finds Mika waiting for him in the house with good news. She tells him that he's going to be a father soon. Daigo suddenly gets a call from the office regarding an emergency. The old lady at the sauna has died. Daigo and Mika visit the old lady's house, where Daigo performs his casketing tasks gracefully. His friend is ashamed to face Daigo after being rude to him earlier, but he soon realizes his mistake. Daigo is surprised when he meets the old man from the sauna. The old man works at the cremation house and gives Daigo's friend a valuable lesson as Daigo and Mika stand by the door to watch the cremation of the old lady from the sauna. He talks about how life passes on to the next after death, so it's essential to honor dead people and bid them proper goodbyes. After the cremation ends, Daigo and Mika visit the lake that Daigo and his family often saw in his childhood. They talk about how gifting stones is a form of expressing one's feelings to a loved one. He tells Mika how gifting a smooth stone symbolizes happy feelings and a rough one represents sadness. Mika is fascinated by his story and asks about the person who taught him about the stones. He tells her that his dad told him about it while they visited this lake during his childhood. Daigo tells her how his dad told him he'd send him a stone every year, but he never did. Soon after, Daigo receives the news of his father's death. He is distraught if he should visit him or not before his cremation. Mrs. Uemura tells him about her past and how she regrets her decision to abandon her son. She tells Daigo how she wishes she could see him one more time and asks her to think about his decision not to visit his dad. Soon after, she insists Daigo pays a visit to his father one last time. Daigo storms off from the office and meets Mika outside. As he runs back home, he tries to clear his conflicted thoughts and anger in his mind and decides to visit his dad one last time. Daigo runs inside the office to ask Mr. Ikui for his car keys. As he enters the office, Mr. Ikui throws the keys toward him as if he knows that Daigo will eventually return. He offers him one of the caskets in his office as a gift to cremate his dad. After visiting his dad, when the undertakers start to perform their task, Daigo asks them if he could complete the casketing work, which they refuse. But after looking at how they handle his father's body, Daigo takes it on himself to perform his father's casketing as Mika tells the undertakers that he's a professional and can handle it. While performing the cleaning up, Diego finds a stone in his father's body. He passes on the stone to Mika and his unborn child with love. He remembers exchanging a stone with his father as a child, and with tears in his eyes, Daigo touches his father's face with love. The end.